Hey, Alexis.
Hey, Allie.
Did you know that it's illegal to harass manatees?
Well, I'm glad it's illegal, but that's
Yeah.
oddly specific.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because they're very prevalent in like the bay areas where people like
Oh,
have,
yeah.
they either fish or they go through because like they're one of the only species that I found that are like you just can't touch them,
Hmm.
which means I can't give them a hug.
Can't pet it, can't give it a little hug.
I mean, they're called sea cows. Like, I just
Yeah.
want to give it a little love. They don't have any, like, predators, so they're just
Yeah.
chilling. They just float on through. But you can look at them from afar.
Don't touch them, though. Don't harass them,
Yeah.
please. I'm begging you.
Welcome back. It's Green Thread. I'm Allie,
And I'm Alexis.
and we're here to tug on that green thread to bring climate news to you. In terms of what we were talking about a second ago with laws, which if you're listening to this audibly, this is where this ties into our fun fact. If you go watch us, you'll find out what that fun fact was. But we're going to be discussing a more like legal lens today on all things environmental, which can go down many rabbit holes, which we might end up going down. But it's an important topic that I feel like we have to understand because a lot of people think that when people get in office or if your like local representatives are, big pro environmental people, but you're not seeing a lot of change, it's because those things take steps. The government and how law works is not like immediate change.
Yeah. It's a very long process for any type of law, not just environmental law, to get passed. You have to actually create the bill, and then they have a meeting and talk about it, and then they set a date to talk about it again and to vote on it, and then it goes through the Senate or the House. I can't remember which one comes first, but it goes through one, and then the other, it has to go through the entire same process again. And
Right.
then by the time it gets off of everybody else's desk and onto the president's desk, they could say no after this entire process that could take
Right.
months, years to do. So it's definitely not easy to get a law or a policy or an act into place. And with recent just political divide in the last 10 years, I would say it has been nearly impossible to get any environmental laws or just even in general, just some other laws passed because of a thing called policy gridlock.
Yep.
And that just happens when basically the parties are so divided that they are not willing to pass something or vote yes just to prevent the other party from having a win or having a success, even if it is better for the betterment of the country, the betterment of a group of people. They are not going to do it. And that's really frustrating and annoying because we're just trying to make the planet a better place, and that is prohibiting it.
No, I know. And a lot of the bipartisan issues, like there could be yeses on all one side, but they're not, there's not a complete divide. So the other side with all the no's can just completely override
Hmm.
all of those yeses. And then it has to go back through and be rewritten or, changed to however it can find that middle ground and
Hmm.
then push back. And it means that the years keep going and people are like, what's going on? And that's when the whole hopelessness comes through because we feel like we're fighting so hard and there's nothing that's getting through. But like Alexis was saying, like it's just there's so many people it has to go through to actually get to the president for one, but also just to get anywhere, it
Hmm.
has to go through so many steps.
Right. And in recent years, like I was saying, with all the policy gridlock, the president uh, they can write an executive order and they can bypass all of that so that way they don't have to wait for all
Yeah.
that time. Like Obama did a lot regarding the environment, and he created the Clean Power Plan in 2015. That was a really, really great thing that he did, but he couldn't get it through the normal process because of the divide and just because of the controversy of it. And it sucks because it was just all about renewable energy sources and better energy, clean power. And he had to go around it and do it that way. And it's not meant to be as a long term solution for law whatsoever, but it just has to be right now just because of the state that we're in.
Yeah, exactly. I know there's a lot of things, not even trying to continue on politics, but that plays a huge part in like, environmental law. But a lot of things that Biden was trying to get through that would just kept being pushed back. And so he can never like truly either get it done, but also talk about it because it was still in the process of being written and rewritten. And there was a lot of things that he did push through that were really great in terms of the environment, but it just takes a long time, and it takes people who want to make that change, as we always say in every episode, to, start that like rock step, I guess. Which, I mean, speaking of environmental law, there also is things that I think are right, just by example, like clean air, clean water, which are why those acts got put in place, so many years ago. And those things are about to be at a challenge in upcoming years because of people who are deniers with both of those things, or they greenwash and say that they're gonna, vote for bills like this, but they've actually in turn voted for bills that are not for clean water and clean air. But those are things I really do think are a civil right. I mean, they are a civil right, which is why they became a law. But even this is kind of proving our point of like how things take time, because even things that have been set in stone from decades ago can be retargeted years down the road because they're either like not protected, like they have loopholes, so they're not protected every like which way, but also like there's can be different ways that people can be like, actually we can have clean air, but we need these facilities to make money, so let's have them, be able to emit all of these pollutants in the air and not just say anything, so no one knows.
And it's funny that you say that. The Clean Air Act has actually been rewritten or been presented in many different shapes and forms, like 3 or 4 times.
Yep,
And it's
exactly.
insane because as people and just as human beings living on this earth, do we not deserve a good quality of life with the environment that we have, and to protect this environment, not only for the sake of it, but just for our own health, for human health? It's insane to me. Like the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, all of that stuff did not come around till the 70s. That was, I mean, that's in our parents' lifetime, grandparents' lifetime, our life, like it's insane. Like we can make a direct correlation to this. Like my parents may not remember that, but my grandmother, I could probably ask her, hey, do you remember when this was like passed and everything, and when that was actually starting to be talked about? And she could probably recount that to me. That's insane. As I said in a previous episode, history is really recent. It's not as far away as we think it is at all.
No, my grandmother was literally in her 30s when it was passed. So imagine like you are 15, 16, and there's no law to protect the air you breathe or the water you drink, and you could be, drinking all those PFAS and and that's probably why all these like cancer causing agents are in people's bodies nowadays, and why people are dying at younger ages than they were before, because they were subjected to those things and there wasn't anything to stop them from, being subjected.
Absolutely. And another thing in recent years, just besides like things like PFAS and all of that, is microplastics. We've done plenty of studies on microplastics, and it hasn't been proven yet that there's any harm, especially long term, because we don't know, because they haven't been around that long. But it's frightening that it's being found in the human body, because surely that cannot be good for our health in the long run.
Absolutely. I mean, they're like, if you look at any study about like laundry, it's in the water you wash your clothes with, which then you put on your skin, which I don't like thinking about.
I know, it's just like it literally makes my skin crawl. Like, ugh, that's
no. And then also just like it's in like the food, it's in the water, it's in the ground. If you sit on the ground, I mean, there's so many different things and ways that it can get on you. But there's also other laws that can protect not only like our like health, but also the species around us too. So like there's the ESA, Endangered Species Act, all within the 70s. And then before the 70s, which is like the cutoff. So technically, the decade of environmental law started in 1969 with NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, but it was then like approved in 1970, like in January. So there's a lot of confusion about that as well. But we like to say the green decade being the 70s. And so just thinking about, like we said, like our grandparents are probably having kids at that point, and finally there's all these different environmental laws that have put in place, but those protect not only a health but natural resources as well, which then makes me think, so in comparison to other countries, it seems as though the US takes a more reactive approach to issues instead of like the precautionary principle of like, what can we do to negate us having to face these issues?
Yeah.
We're like oops, that happened. How do we fix it now? And so it just, and that can be said about literally anything. The climate crisis, we're literally being taught about it right now. It's in our faces. And we're like, that's in like a couple years. It's not like we don't need to fix that right now. What's putting money in my pocket? And we're all like, all of us are screaming and we're like, no, it's right here.
It's right in front of us. And you're absolutely right about how we do things very reactively instead of preventative measure. And a lot can be said about healthcare as well. And just, we don't come up with a solution, or we don't try and put our energy towards preventing something. We just put it towards, oh, whoopsie, that happened. I guess we'll try and fix it as best as we can. There's nothing we can do about it. When really there is something you could do about it before it happened. How did you not see this? I mean, the whole game is laid out in front of you. It's like you just unfold a freaking board and it's all right in front of you. And how are you missing this,
Exactly. Like teaching a kid how to, walk on the ground without falling and scraping itself versus like it doing that and then putting a band-aid on it, like, oops, sorry, got a scratch, here's a band-aid. No, this is how you walk, or this is how you do this. And that's just an issue I feel like is deep rooted in the American system. And I don't really know the best way to approach it, but I think just we always talk about education and just researching and like getting laws passed and like even just written, especially with like, the Endangered Species Act being one of the ones I mentioned. Like there's a lot of species that are on that right now, or the IUCN Red List, that are extinct, and maybe there's a bit of them out there, we just haven't seen them. So then rewriting a new law to protect them because we've rediscovered. Just keeping it all updated, I think. It's very important to not just let things slide, because then those loopholes get bigger.
I was just going to say, that's exactly how those loopholes happen. And when there are things that are started restricting carbon emissions, people have found, like with a carbon tax, for example, there are so many loopholes with that, because a company may, for X amount of carbon emissions you create, this is how much you have to pay. Well, if I'm a $10 billion company and the tax is only $2 million, I'm going to pay it, because that's only a small dent out of my pocket. And it drives me nuts, the amount of loopholes that there are. And another one that I thought of whenever you were talking about how we do things very much after the fact instead of before, I can't remember the year that this was. We just talked about this in my sustainability class, but there was a law or an act that had prevented companies spilling oil into the ocean. And there was one of the, I can't remember if it was the original one or if after the fact it was recreated or reinstated, but it said, oh, well, we will protect our oceans from oil spills except for accidents. So, if it's an accident, oh, don't worry about it, but it's like, okay, what? Like, that's insane. I understand it was an accident, but at the same time, I don't understand that it was an accident. What do you mean you just leaked all this oil into the ocean and it was just a little whoopsie. It was my bad, like my fault. Like, no, it is your fault, and you should be held responsible for that.
Exactly, because if another company sees that you did that and you were able to just write it off as an accident, then they'll do it and say the same thing, because like manufacturing malfunctions happen literally all the time, and that's the easiest way to greenwash.
Yeah, you can be like, oh, we're doing all this good stuff, and then you spill your oil into the ocean, say it's an accident, so you're not really green. And going back to what we were talking about earlier with some other laws and around the world maybe a little bit better than us, Europe is a lot more environmentally minded than we are. I feel like they're just kind of a couple steps ahead of us. They actually created a law that went into place in this past July of this year, so just a few months ago, about bottle caps on plastic bottles being attached to the bottle instead. Like, you can't take it completely off, if that makes sense. And I know we had talked kind of about that a little bit in one of our previous episodes, recycling them together, because some of them can be. So they've started doing that. And it's actually made a lot of people angry. I saw on social
What?
media, they're like, this is the most annoying, stupid thing that the EU has ever done. And it's like, okay, it's a minor inconvenience. Of course, people are going to complain. But that is something so small, yet so, like, I don't know, that could make such a big difference. Think about the amount of plastic bottles that are used every single day in all of Europe, a whole continent.
Right.
That's huge. That's a huge step in the right direction. And I was reading an article, I think it was from a website called Euronews, so it was just kind of giving me the lowdown on it. And I saw that they are actually going to plan to ban other types of plastics, like mini hotel uh, packaging and
Mm-hmm.
wraps that go on fruits, packaging for fruits and vegetables, and some packaging in fast food restaurants. They plan to ban that in March, is what I was reading on that article. I'm not sure if that article is still up to date. I'm assuming it's from at least July since it was talking about the new
Right.
law. But yeah, they are just kind of thinking about things like that, the little things. And even though that's such a small thing that can be a minor inconvenience to people, that is going to help make a huge impact because those small things are what adds up to that big picture.
Exactly. And when like went back to people complaining about the bottle caps,
Hmm.
I mean, I think I've lost so many bottle caps every time
Yeah.
like what it's right there and it's attached. So what is it?
I don't see the problem. I don't know if it's because we're all about this stuff and I'm for that, but I really don't see the issue. Helping, it's helping you. You're not losing the bottle cap. You're not going to drop it on the floor.
Right.
And it's helping to the recyclers actually recycle easier instead of having to sort out one more thing.
Right. And it goes back to like I know we've like sort of talked about how people can start trends that maybe aren't like they become like they're micro trends but then they get bigger or like they're ones that might not be the one to follow. So just kind of choosing which one to jump on. But like this can be one of those. Like if you hear
Hmm.
people complaining about something that, might be just like a minor inconvenience, like Alexis said, like it still, doesn't take away the fact that it has a good intention
Hmm.
and versus like because if everybody starts complaining then that can reverse a good deed
Yeah.
and so like your voice is your power and before you start like thinking that things are bad you know just because they are a change for you doesn't mean that their purpose serves like nobody.
Yeah.
I don't know, it just kind of aggravates me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just being a human being that can look at something from all angles is just a good trait to possess when it comes to literally anything, not just the environment, not just yourself and what irritates you and your pet peeves, but just looking at, okay, how is this going to help others? How is this going to help me? Because that's in
Hmm.
the long run, that is going to help everyone around the world. And kind of tying back in the US with laws, the European Union and the Paris Climate Agreement.
Yep.
That has happened in recent years, and we had originally been a part of the Paris Climate Agreement. We were pulled out of it, and then we were back in it. And now, honestly, after this recent election, I'm not sure if we're going to stay in it or not.
Hmm.
And I find it fascinating that also globally, there hasn't been that many events. There's been the Kyoto Protocol in 1997 that happened. That was a global uh, conference about the environment. And then there was the 2016, I believe it was 2016 Paris Climate Agreement. Don't quote me on that. Uh, and then the Copenhagen Accord had happened. I'm not sure if that was global or just European, but there's been very few global meetings about the environment. And if we're going to really do this thing and be on
Hmm.
this planet all together and truly make a big difference, I think that it's kind of on our world leaders as well and lawmakers and everyone to get together and put their heads together and say, okay, what can we do over here in this ocean? What can we do
Right.
over here in this type of climate to better protect this type of environment? What can we do over here down here in the southern hemisphere? Just different things require different needs, but if we all realize that and help each other, the world would be a much better place.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're so divided in a lot
Hmm.
of aspects, and I think if like we stopped looking at it as how can we be better than this country,
Yeah.
instead thinking like say the US adopts that same like law that the EU just passed with the bottle caps, like that can magnify its impacts just by the two of us.
Hmm.
Instead of it being like, well, I did this, what did you do? Like the, mean stepsister,
Yeah.
stepbrother. Because I mean, we already have issues in America on littering. And
Hmm.
I think if we adopted that, there'd be like less litter just from
Yeah.
bottles. I was doing some research and I saw that Americans litter 50 billion pieces of trash annually. And if you want to have that on a smaller scale that seems bigger, that's 152 items per person.
That literally is horrifying. Like,
Yeah.
I can't believe that. Litter makes me so mad too. I'm driving down the road and I just see plastic water bottles or a plastic bag or it just any piece of trash. I just want to it makes me want to scream. It just
Yeah.
makes me so angry. And with littering, obviously there's some protections, but clearly it's not well
Mm-hmm.
enforced.
No, yeah. I mean, there's anti-litter laws like you were just
Yeah, there's
getting at.
fines and
But at the same time, like, who's watching people,
yeah.
enough to actually persecute them?
Hmm.
And I mean, when I think about it, not only from like a human thing, but like, I mean, the most of the times people bring it up is because of like wildlife,
Hmm.
and it's not only just ugly when you see like litter on the ground, but wildlife will get entangled in it
Hmm.
or they ingest it. Imagine if you were just, going about your day and there's this piece of like plastic wrapper on the ground, but it looks like food and you eat it and you die.
Yeah. That's
Like,
that's the reality for a lot of animals, honestly.
yeah. Like what is that? And I mean, like we were talking about, there are anti-litter laws, but they're not really strong enough. And it also is up to like I think it's up to the states, don't quote me, but like it's just different throughout states, and
Hmm.
so that's why I assume I was doing one of this is more local, but I was doing a Alatoona cleanup a couple of years in a row, and each time it just got worse and worse in terms of like what I expected to see.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, I don't have high expectations to begin with because
Right.
that's one of those places that's like kind of like Lake Lanier, which is more universally known, where people just go to have fun, drink,
Hmm.
and leave.
Yeah.
But the scope of it was just not there because we were in a cove and I saw, okay, first of all, it was kind of creepy because we saw like a baby shoe, a beer bottle, and a tire that had like clothes wrapped in it. So that already
Oh,
was a little bit suspicious.
yeah.
But at the same time, like there was so many like bottles just in the ground, like glass bottles. There was like so many plastic bottles too,
Hmm.
and plastic bags and beach toys and just so many things. And we had to like, find a way to get them into a bag
Yeah.
to take them somewhere. They also probably couldn't have been dealt with the way they should have when they were actually being used.
Hmm.
The trash can was not even a yard up the road. Like it's not far. And also like why are we collectively just thinking, I'll throw it here and leave it? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just a lazy thing. Maybe it's just an inconsiderate thing. But, like, why? I don't know. It's just weird. But, and the topic of cleanups, that can be one way that if it also angers you as much as it angers us, then you can join, like, a volunteer cleanup group near you. If you want to like find some, I know when I was looking up, it was like Great American Cleanup was a big global one that they have different events going on in different places. Same with Keep America Beautiful and earthday.org for cleanups, which Earth Day is a big event that people will usually find ways to do things, but I feel like they're also good for finding resources for just daily activities like this that you can do to go and clean up some trash.
Yeah, and even if you can't find something near you, start one. Organize a
Yeah.
cleanup yourself, talk to maybe a local official about getting an official day for your city or your town to do it. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your family and friends. Y'all just go out, maybe make sure you have some proper equipment, maybe some gloves and trash bags, and even maybe some grabbers to pick up some dangerous, more hazardous trash. But you can do this yourself. You can do
Yeah.
this thing. You can do whatever you want to. And call your local lawmakers. Call your lawmakers in your state, in your country, and really push for that change because we can do as much as we can, but at the end of the day, to get laws passed and something that large, we need a lot of people, and that can't happen if we make our voices heard. We just
Mhm.
need to let them know this is how we feel. Write a letter to them, write an email. You don't have to call them. I know calling can be a little anxiety inducing, but if you send an email, I'm sure there's a way to text now, to text a lawmaker or something. Just find any way to get that message out there and let them know, hey, this is really urgent in my state or in my city or in this country, and this is what we want as people of this place. That's what we want.
Yep. Get out there. And if you like end up getting inspired by this episode, which I hope you do, then, you know, tag us in a picture of you at a cleanup, or like maybe even just your efforts. Like say, hey, like DM us and say, hey, I reached out. I don't know what's going to happen, but I did it.
Yeah.
And you never know what we'll do.
Yeah. And that's the whole goal of this. We want to build a community of people who love the environment and are doing the best that they can and giving their efforts to make the world a better place. That's the whole idea behind this.
Absolutely. Well, we'll catch you next time. Hopefully you have a bag of trash with you. But keep, you know, following our Instagram, keep listening in, and also we have a few new forms on our link tree. Go check those out to help with us in research and citizen science, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, check us out. Keep caring.